Hey everyone, today I want to talk about the 2000 Cobra R values. A little bit of history on the car. In the year 2000, the MSRP on this car was $54,995. So if you translate that in today's money, the car at that time was over $80,000. So for a Mustang at that time, that was very expensive. Because this was such a low production car and there was a very long waiting list for this, it was not uncommon for dealers to mark these things up significantly. A lot of owners paid $20,000 over MSRP for these things, and there were a couple stories that people paid upwards of $90,000 just to get their hands on one of these. So at the time, this was a super, super desirable car. Now, fast forward 18 years later, and this is still a very desirable car. A lot of the people that could not afford this car when it was new are now seeking it out now that they have the financial means to afford something like this. And even some sales now are actually above MSRP. Not a lot of them, but there are some sales of super clean cars with really low mileage selling for over MSRP. So the car has actually held its value fairly well, especially compared to most cars from this era, especially Mustangs. Now, pricing this car can be a little bit difficult because a lot of times the buyers will feel the car is worth a certain amount of money and the sellers will feel it's worth a different amount. And there's a big difference between an asking price and a selling price. It's not uncommon, obviously, with especially car sales, where someone will start off high and then work their way down and negotiate to a price with these things. Some people on my channel have asked me about the pricing of these things. They're saying they've seen a lot of people asking $50,000, $55,000, $60,000, $70,000 for these cars. Again, that's an asking price. That's not a selling price. It's just a matter of how much someone really wants the car and how long someone is willing to sell on the car before they come to a price that they agree upon and that they sell the car. Now, it can be very difficult to price a car like this because it is a super low production car, and a lot of websites and magazines will often come up short on the pricing of this. Some people will look at things like Kelley Blue Book and NADA guides, and with this being a car where they only made 300, it can be a little bit difficult for those figures to be accurate. I think that they kind of lump all the 2000 Mustang sales into the pricing for these cars, is not just the Rs, the V6s and the GTs as well. So they tend to come up a little bit short. And this year, Sports Car Market magazine published their annual values, and for this car, they came up with an average value of $17,500. Now, I don't know where they got that number from. I think that number is really, really low. If they think that that's an average value, I would like to see some of the sales where they have got these numbers from, as well as some of the low values they've seen these cars sell for. I've been watching these cars pretty carefully for about 10 years now, and I have never seen any 2000 Cobra R sell for anywhere near 17,000. So that just seems like a very, very low number. I don't know if they're lumping in the GTs and the V6s with that number as well, but I wouldn't be surprised for the number to come up that short. Most owners and myself agree that these cars now in 2018 will typically sell for the $40,000 to $50,000 range. Obviously, if you want to learn more, go on the Cobra R forum. There's a lot of really good owners on there, very knowledgeable, and it's a great place as a resource to learn about the car, as not just the values, but about the car itself. Now, with the $40,000 to $50,000 pricing being said, I have seen in the last few years some sales below $40,000. Typically, those are cars that are in really rough condition, high mileage, no paperwork, and they may have been used for heavy track use, so they tend to be a little bit more beat up, or they've been involved in accidents. And on the other spectrum of that, I have seen cars go above $50,000, a few sales. Again, these high and lows are the exception, not the norm. Typically, the cars above $50,000 are cars that really never leave the garage. They're all original, all the paperwork, super low mileage. Some of them still have all the bags on the seats and some of the body protection on the car from the factory. So these are cars that have been driven very, very little, if at all. So, but 40 to 50 is a very fair number, to say the least. Now, when you're also looking at pricing on these things, it can be hard to find out a lot of private sales because people typically don't disclose that. So a lot of people will look at things like eBay, if a car sells or not, and they will look at a lot of auction houses. Now, with auction houses, when you look at the sale price, those numbers sometimes do or do not include all the additional fees involved. Now, if you've never bought from an auction, all the big name auctions, Mecum, Russo and Steel, Barrett Jackson, they typically charge buyers and sellers fees. If you're going to sell the car, they're going to charge you a fee just to get the car in, whether it sells or not. They're going to charge you a percentage. Like I think a lot of those auction houses will charge anywhere between 6 and 10% of what the car sells for to the seller and the buyer. So if you're going there, say, to buy the car, you need to take into account if it hammers for $40,000 and it's going to cost you money to register to bid, usually a few $100s just to register, and they're going to take, let's just say for argument's sake, 10%, which is a little bit on the higher end of most auction houses. I mean, you're going to pay nearly, by the time you walk out the door and you got to transport it, may possibly pay to transport it to get it home, you're probably going to pay close to $45,000 for that car that hammered for $40,000. So that's another thing to keep in when you're looking at auction prices. Some people don't like looking at auction prices because they feel that they can be tampered with. People will have people secretly bidding, like their friends, to kind of raise the prices. But take it for what it's worth. But there are a lot of very expensive fees that a lot of those auction houses take. So just keep that in mind when you look at pricing on their websites of what their cars have sold for. Now, obviously, when you're looking at a car, you're looking at the overall condition of the car to assess the value, not just the body work, the history of the car, if they have any accident history or salvage title or anything like that. You're looking for the condition inside the car. You're looking for if it's original or modified. You're looking at the mileage, all that stuff. You look at that stuff with every single car. Now, the one thing that's different about this car that makes a tremendous difference in the value is the paperwork. Now, I'm not just talking about things like the owner's manual, the window sticker, which they do add a little bit of value, but the big thing for this car is what they call the Cobra R black binder. Now, this was only on the 2000 Cobra R. They didn't do this on the 93 or the 95, this black binder. What this was Ford put this together. They made one for every car. There were no extras made. You cannot get an extra from Ford if you are missing the original. So that's what helps add the value of these things. But it was basically a book. It had the R symbol on the front of it. And it had like a dash plaque in it with the VIN number and the vehicle number, pictures of the car going down the assembly line being built, talked about all the engineers that were involved with the car itself. And Ford made them after the cars went out to owners. So owners had to contact SVT, show them their registration, show them they own the car, and they would send them out. There are still a handful of unclaimed binders in 2018, but those binders are extremely valuable. They very, very, very rarely come up for sale. It's just a binder, kind of randomly makes its way on like eBay or something like that. They will usually sell for over $1,000, just the binder, no car, with all of the original paperwork in it. So that is a very important question to ask a potential seller if you're looking to buy the car, because that can add or subtract a lot of value, especially you, if you buy one and you want to go sell it down the road. Anybody who's well informed or really knows their stuff about these cars, that's one of the first things they're going to ask you is if you have that binder. Because like I said, Ford never made any extras. They made exactly 300, one for each car. That was it. They do not make more. They will likely never make more. And if you don't have it, it's going to be extremely difficult to track one down. And even if you did, it technically probably wouldn't match the car unless it was one for that exact car, because it would have a different vehicle and VIN numbers on the paperwork inside the binder for it. I have mine. If you check out my video on Cobra R paperwork, I go into that binder in a lot of depth and I talk about it. Now, if you are looking to buy a 2000 Cobra R, now is a really good time. The prices have slowly been creeping up over the last few years. Nothing crazy. Since I started looking at these things very closely about 8 to 10 years ago, I would say the prices have gone up. Give or take about average of about $10,000, I would say, more or less, in the last 10 years. So that's a fairly slow rate of rise. It is an increase. I would not recommend buying this car as an investment. If you're going to buy it, enjoy it, and drive it, and have a lot of fun with it, but I would, like I said, don't buy this car as an investment. They're not going to go up that fast. Some owners think these things will explode in value because they are such a rare car, and they're going to kind of go the way of some of the Boss Mustangs, especially the 429s from the 1960s, where they really go up crazy one day. It's a possibility, but I think enough of these cars have been very, very well preserved and have just lived in the garage their entire life, to the point where there are still a lot of super low mileage examples that are all original, very clean, barely driven cars, that it's kind of keeping the values from going crazy. Because unlike the Boss 429s 30, 40 years later, there's more than just one or two of these things that are all original, super low mileage, all the paperwork. Because back in the 60s, no one really cared about preserving cars back then the way we do now. So there is more supply to meet the demand. But again, it's a great car. I highly recommend it. And the prices are coming up slow enough where you can kind of do your research and really figure out if this is the car for you and what condition is right for you. And then you can go out and make an informed purchase and get a really nice car that you can drive and enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.